A fun fact that I have about this film when it comes to my personal life, let's say, is that I rewatched this before the new one came out, and I was watching this with my family, and they got so scared, they stood up and they left the living room because they got so scared. So that was pretty fun, and that was so funny because that's how effective this movie is. Welcome back everyone. So first things first, apologies if it looks weird that I'm filming this with a hat, but it's just because my hair is a completely mess right now and I honestly didn't want to scare you in today's video. Happy Insidious 5 release week. This film was released last Friday, so we keep celebrating the release of this new film because honestly horror at the big screen just hits different. As you read by the title, today what we're gonna do is we're gonna rank and we're gonna talk about the whole franchise. So we have 5 films to talk about and to rank. This ranking might be controversial because my positions are not the same ones as other people, but that's the fun thing about ranking movies, you know. Just a warning before we start with today's ranking is that the Insidious franchise is one of my favorites of all time, like in my top 10. So that means that I enjoy every single film. For me, there is no bad films on this franchise, if that makes sense. And that's not something that happens in every horror franchise, you know. When I have to do a marathon about this franchise, I honestly will enjoy every single installment. Obviously, some films are weaker than others, but that's the difference of saying some films are bad than others. So we're gonna go from the weakest Insidious film to obviously the best film. My relationship with this franchise is honestly quite cute because the first Insidious is honestly one of the scariest films that I watched growing up, because when the film came out, I was becoming a horror fan. Even though I started watching horror around 2007, 2008, 2010 was the year when I was starting to watch horror films on my own. If I have to critique anything from this franchise, is that in every installment you can find some cheap jump scares that I'm not a really big fan of. You know, those jump scares where everything is on silent and you're just waiting and waiting for that to happen, and then it happens. Every installment it has those, and I'm not a big fan of those because you're waiting for it. So, and some overall and positive things about this franchise. First of all, obviously, like I said before, a storyline. I think these movies have really strong storylines and really strong scripts. In every film you can see that the writers, they really had passion about writing these films, and that's something that you have to appreciate, because possession films or like demonic films, I don't think they are so easy to write because you don't want to become cheesy, if that makes sense, because this subgenre can become so cheesy, so it's really hard to make them scary. Another positive aspect that I have overall about these films is the cinematography and the sound design, especially the sound design, because the sound design is perfect in every single film. I'm not even exaggerating, because the sound design in these films, they really make you feel things that maybe not other possession films make you feel, especially when we are in the further, because in every film obviously you go into the further. I think the sound design on those scenes is really amazing. Also the sound design when we are at the house or at the landscape where the movie takes place is beautiful, especially because our characters are feeling something that is in the house or whatever they are, and that's something really hard to do during shooting, during the production of the films, and also on editing, because obviously you need to bring some things alive that obviously they are not alive. So that's something hard to make, and I think every Insidious films know how to do that. For example, the knocks, for example, the music, for example, the stairs, you know, all of those mini sounds that really help you build up the scary scenes in every single film. I think the Insidious films are one of the best sound design horror films to ever exist. I'm not even exaggerating. Now I'm gonna shut up and we're gonna start talking about the ranking, and we're gonna start from the weakest film out of the whole franchise. And I'm not gonna read the synopsis because those films are pretty much well known, and I will also be throwing up some fun facts, some trivias, maybe some awards that the film won, and maybe some data and all of that, because I think it's important to know the situation from our favorite films, if that makes sense. So coming at number 5, we have Insidious Chapter 3, directed by Lee Whannell. The current situation with Insidious Chapter 3 is that it's situated in a 6.1 out of 10 on IMDb, and it also is situated on a 2.5 stars overall out of 5 on Letterboxd. Now, Insidious Chapter 3, this film had a budget of $10 million and worldwide that captured $113 million, so that's a huge difference for this film. Now, Insidious 3, as weak as it can sound, it got nominated to 10 different horror awards and it won 3. So those awards were the best horror film at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy and Horror Awards. It also won the best sequel, prequel or remake at the Blood Guts UK Horror Awards, and it also won at the Empire Awards UK the best horror debut. But why did I include Insidious Chapter 3 at the last place, and why do I think it's the weakest? Now, first things first, like I said before, when you have a lot of cheesiness and a lot of cliché stuff, a lot of things that have been done in the past, I think that Insidious Chapter 3 commits a lot of those cheesiness and a lot of clichés and stuff. Because if you think about it, this film came out in 2015, so we've seen a lot of demonic and possession films before that era, in the middle 2000s, the early 2010s. So Insidious Chapter 3 was in a place in the middle of a decade where many similar films were coming out. And when it comes to the case in this film, I honestly found it really cute. I think it was like a wholesome, because we get to see Elise more for the first time in action before we knew the first 2 films. And I think also I liked how the movie touches the whole grief from a relative that passed away, because as you know me, that's one of my biggest fears, death in general. So I think this film touches that really clever. I also liked the demon, let's call him like that. He's not really a demon, but you know what I mean. I think the creature in this film, his design was really amazing. I think the makeup and the practical effects on him were amazing. But why do I think this film is the weakest? Like I said before, this film falls in a lot of cheesiness, in the cheesiness pool, if that makes sense. Maybe this film would have worked better if we just had the bigger sister, if that makes sense. If this was like an individual kind of film. Some things that I have to give to this film is that I really liked some horror imagery that it has there. For example, when our protagonist, she's fully blinded and she has no arms or no legs. I think those images were really strong, and I believe that those notes were CGI. And also I think the further in this film is not the best out of the whole franchise, because we see many different ghosts and stuff, but they look too humanic, if that makes sense, not like the other films. But overall, I enjoyed this film. Even though it's the weakest for me, I like rewatching it because it's such an easy watch. It's just like an hour and 35 minutes, so it's very easy. I think it works as a prequel. I just found it really cheesy. Now, coming at number 4, we have Insidious: The Last Key, directed by Adam Robitel. The current situation with Insidious: The Last Key is that it's standing on a 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb, and it's also standing on a 2.4 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. Now, Insidious: The Last Key, it also had a budget of $10 million and it went to make $168 million. So that's really admirable, because coming from a $10 million to make almost 200, that's very inspirational. And also this film sadly didn't win any awards, but it got nominated 6 times to best horror film, also best voiceover, and also to the best makeup. Now this film is at the 4th place and is slightly better than Insidious Chapter 3. The main reason is because Elise. We get to know about Elise because we love her. She's an icon. She's one of the best horror characters ever. I'm not even complaining. I love Elise so that much, and the fact that we got to see a whole movie about her, I think that was beautiful. We get to know about why does she have this power, how did she develop this power. We get to see about her toxic childhood. We get to know about her toxic family, how they just escape from there. So we get to know more about her as a person, and I think that was beautiful. I absolutely loved this film because of that. I also loved how that past affects her in her present, years later, 50 years later, let's say. I think that was awesome. I love the whole communication between her and her brother, how she had to leave him so she could protect him. I absolutely love the creature in this film. I think he looks amazing. The work behind this actor is incredible. The fact that he made those moves, the fact that it's an actual person behind the costume, there is no CGI involved. I think that's impressive because that's not something that you can see in every horror film. Now, coming at the third place, and this might be controversial because not many people will expect this, but for me, coming at number 3 will be Insidious Chapter 2, released in 2013, directed by the iconic James Wan. Current situation for Insidious Chapter 2 is that it's standing on a 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb, and it's also standing on a 2.9 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Now, believe it or not, this film had a lower budget than Insidious 3 and Insidious 4. This film only had a budget of $5 million, and it went to make worldwide $162 million. So that's a huge difference. Again, sadly, this film didn't get any awards, but it got nominated to 16 different nominations, including Best Director, Best Horror Film, Best Actor for Patrick Wilson, Best Actress, and Best Cinematography. Now, you will be surprised on why I included this film at the third place, because this film is like, sometimes it's the first place to many lists that I've seen there on YouTube, but the main reason why this film comes at number 3 is because this doesn't feel like an independent film, you know, this just feels like it's the continuity of the first film. And also, a few things I didn't like about this film, but obviously I don't hate it, I absolutely love this film, is that this film has a lot of cheesiness and a lot of cheap jump scares that I'm not a big fan of, even though I gave this film 4 stars, but I have to say that after seeing the first film, and because it's a direct sequel, you wouldn't expect this film to have so many cheap jump scares, but they do. And also, I have to say that I think this film has way too many demons, way too many dead people. My favorite aspect from Insidious Chapter 2 is the Black Bride, Charles. I have to say that he is one of my favorite characters in this franchise, and when he is the Black Bride, I think it's absolutely terrifying. There is one scene in this film where the Black Bride is about to kill like a family. That was absolutely horrific. I wish we could see more of that on this film. I wish we concentrated more on the Black Bride rather than in Josh, if that makes sense. Because I think the Black Bride is such an interesting character, and I also loved how in this film you feel like these characters are really in danger because of what's happening to Josh, especially at the climax of the film where he is attacking his kids, his wife, everyone around him. And there is one scene where he is talking with the other guy, like Ellie's friend, and he looks so creepy. I think Patrick Wilson does an amazing job on this film, and I think that's also one of the reasons why this film comes at number 3, because his acting is amazing, and I wish and I hope we can see him doing more creepy characters. Now, coming at number 2, and as soon as I reveal this film, you will know what's my number 1, so I'm gonna try and talk about them really quick. And coming at number 2, you will be hella surprised, but it's the new film, Insidious 5, The Red Door, directed by Patrick Wilson. So the current situation of Insidious 5 is that it's standing on a 6 out of 10 on IMDb, and it's also standing on a 2.6 on Letterboxd. And let me just say that I hope this movie gets more recognition. This movie just came out, it's not even a month old, so I really hope in the future this film at least gets to be a 3 on Letterboxd, because 2.6 is so low. So this film had a budget of $16 million, and for now the movie is standing on a $68 million, so it's a pretty much high difference, and I think they're gonna make more money because again this movie just came out. By the time I'm making this video, it's only been like 4 days after its release, so I think this film might go until like 100, maybe 120, and that's a huge difference compared to $16 million. Now, the main reason why this film counts at second place, and why do I think this film is better than number 2, number 3, and number 4, the main reason is because I think this movie works perfectly as a horror drama. I think this movie touches such a depressing topic. I think this film is so depressing. Who would have thought that an Insidious film would be so emotionally touching? Because This movie made me teary. I cried at the cinemas. I watched this movie twice. And I have to say that you really feel devastated for these characters. All of the characters, especially the couple and Dalton. I absolutely love that we're following a broken family. I also love the whole interaction between Dalton as a teenager with the world after his trauma. I love how he and Patrick Wilson, like Dalton and Josh, they don't really belong. They don't really get along with each other, even though they were like the perfect family in the first film. So I think it feels really real. I felt identified with Dalton on many occasions, and that's why it made me teary, because it's not like I've been through similar situations as him, but some aspects I have. Now, I also love that this film is the perfect closure to the first two films, so I think this is a perfect trilogy, you know? Now, a few critiques that I have about this film is that I don't really like that we spend so much time on the sorority house, because that was not really needed. I think they could have done something else, maybe in the forest or something like that. I think the sorority house was not really needed. I was not a big fan. Well, another critique that I have is that I just don't like the older brother. I think he's such an useless character. Like, honestly, maybe they could have said, like, he went to university across the world, so we don't need to see him in this film, because the scenes where he is at, I think they're pretty much useless. They don't really give anything to the film. Also, I wish that we could have known why his mom, Josh's mom, passed away. I think it would have been amazing if she died on her dreams, maybe the Black Bride, you know, something like that. That we could have had more explanation, because she's an important character in the first two films, especially in the second film, because she's been chased by the Black Bride since Josh was a little kid. So she's been chased for years, for 40 years. For her to just pass away out of nowhere in the opening, I think we could have had more explanations. Maybe it would have been amazing if the opening scene of this movie would have been her dead, something like that, because this movie is already depressing, so why not making it even more depressing, you know? And coming at number one, as you will expect, is the original Insidious from 2010, directed by the iconic James Wan. Now, the current situation of Insidious is standing on a 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb, and is also standing on a 3.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Now, this film had a budget, listen to me, of $1,100,000, and it went to make around $100 million. So that's very inspirational, because this film didn't even have $2 million as a budget, and it went to make those numbers. And I think that's amazing. It also got nominated to 15 different kind of nominations. Now, why is this film my number one, and why do I think it's the best Insidious film? And the main reason is because of its originality and uniqueness. I think this film coming out in 2010 was perfect, was the perfect choice. I'm so glad that James Wan came out with this idea and Lee Whannell came out with this idea. Like, this film came out directly in the middle. It's a 2010 film. It was ending an era and it was starting a new one. So I think this film for that era is pretty unique. It's like you wouldn't have seen this concept on that era, because that era was really all about slashers, was really all about remakes. So you wouldn't see this kind of concept on that era. So that's pretty amazing, and I think that's why this film won so many awards. I think that's why this film got so many loved back in the day. And apart from its uniqueness and originality, I think this film is hella scary. Even right now, 13 years after, it always keeps catching me by surprise. I always get scared with this film. I think the jump scares are really effective. I think also the sound design is amazing, especially in the further and at the house. I think this film has so many effective scares, and I absolutely love that we follow a normal family. I love that we have a baby. This film has beautiful long shots, especially the one where she is walking in the house and there is the kid standing in the corner. If this film came out right now in 2023, we will hate this film so much, but you have to think about that this film came out in 2010, an era where comedy was at the top of the game, where the slashers were at the top of the game. So this film was really battling against common stuff, you know, so I will always appreciate that. I think Insidious is aging so well, like a good wine, and I think it will keep doing that. I think this film, yes, I do consider it a modern classic, so I don't really understand why this film has received so much hate, because honestly I think it deserves way more than a 3. I think this film deserves being a 3.8, even a 4 on Letterboxd. Because alright everyone, so that was my ranking. I hope you stay with me until the end of this video, and please let me know your ranking in the comment section below. I will absolutely love to read your rankings because I know they're pretty much different. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope you have a nice end of the week, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.
You go deeper into the further. I don't have memories from this place.